So you have to see what the system intended even back in the 1930s. You had to see it. That's why people have to see things that are so devastating, because you won't remember it if it's not devastating. That's the thing about it. That's what the catch-22 about learning is, that you have to remember it. And it's a painful process learning stuff. It's a painful process. And it's so easy to be ignorant. It's easy to be ignorant. It's easy to feel good all the time, because there's so many things out there that people can go into to feel good all the time. But it's so difficult to feel pain. It's so difficult to feel suffering. It's so difficult to learn something that you need to learn to save your own life. Oh my gosh. When you have like a homogenized community, that was never conditioned to deal with somebody veering off to a different situation, and then they are hunted by somebody in their community, and they're not aware of somebody hunting them, and they don't see the charisma and the danger of that person, and so they invite them in their house and they do all this stuff, and then that person that's hunting them destroys them in their own house. Now, if no one knew about that situation, that person was missing and got destroyed by somebody hunting them in their community, no one would be the wiser. There'd be no lesson to learn, right? It would just be like, oh, this person is gone. And that was it. There'd be nothing. Until more people start coming up missing. Then people are like, well, what happened to Johnny, Billy, Susie? What happened? The body's gone. There is no actual evidence or witnesses of something going on, but Johnny, Billy, Susie are gone. And so people are just like, okay, well, and then there's an unsettling feeling in the pit of a homogenized community that has a hunter in their community that is slowly but surely surgically taking people out of their community. And then one day something happens and someone looks through the window and sees that hunter that no one knew about destroying somebody. And they're like, oh, they look through the window and they're like, oh my God. They're like, oh my God. That was Frank, who also came up missing, and he's destroying Mary. And so that person who looked through the window and saw and was devastated and was so shocked and saw the situation, then went and told the elders of the community. And they're like, oh, are you serious? And then the killer, right, saw that he was observed by someone. And maybe let's just pretend that, he ran away, and so the body was left there. The evidence was left there. And all the elders and everybody came into that house, and they're like, oh my gosh. And now they're devastated. There's a killer in the midst. What are they going to do? Now they're more careful inviting people into their house. They don't know. They're more careful. They're now aware that the world isn't always going to be safe. The world isn't going to always be safe. Now, what are they going to do to protect themselves and their children? And that's the beginning of it all. See, the ones that were disappeared because they had no idea they walked into danger, well, they're done. They're gone. They're extinct. It's the ones that saw the danger, observed the danger, saw the catalyst, saw the action, saw the reaction, and then they went into action, reaction, and put in measures for protection. And then there you go. The rest is history. You have rules, you have laws, you have best practices, you have protocols, whatever. That's where rules and laws come from. That's because When you don't see danger for what it is, you'll invite it into your house. When you don't see danger for what it is, something will happen to you and you may not survive that situation. That's essentially that's what extinction is when you don't see danger for what it is, you will invite it into your house, you will serve it dinner, you will let it play with your kids, you will let it play with your animals, you will even give it money and power and fame and fortune. And then over time or even immediately, those who are exposed to that dangerous entity, whatever it is, causes extinction in that situation. That's why you have to see how bad it could get. That's why you had to observe and are observing what people are capable of. That's why you had to be traumatized. That is a lesson above all else, and you can't forget it. And if you do forget it, you'll walk into danger and you won't survive it. The whole point of cell memory and trauma is to remember it and not put yourself in that situation ever again. The whole point of watching your friends and family die from preventable deaths, and then you can make it mean that it was from A, B, C, D, F, and G. And I guess at this point it doesn't even matter, because if you think that someone died because of a V, you think someone died because of air, food, and water, well, before you had all those arguments to blame, why did people die before those arguments? Oh, was there something else to blame, 2,000 years ago of why people died? Were they poisoning the air, food, and water 2,000 years ago, and that's why Noah died, and that's why Moses died, and that's why Jesus died, and that's why Muhammad died? What was the activism, blame game, scapegoat 2,000, 3,000, 1,000 years ago? Why people die is because the ignorant. They walk into danger. They invite danger, and they don't know what it is. They've never had to see a hardship and remember. And they allowed someone to give them a storyline of what danger was and what danger is. But they still accepted death. That's the irony of it all, is that people still accept death, which is another storyline. And they're afraid of all these things, and still put themselves in danger to inevitably die anyways. I mean, I'll tell you, the conundrums are like astronomical. I tell you, I just, that's why I realize now there's nothing I can do for anyone. Obviously, I mean, I already realized it, but even more so when I'm observing what I know is to be true, and the fact I was given a gift by my mother to live in fear, to understand the power of fear and the power of story. Oh my gosh. Then I'm watching all the storylines circulate. And even even posting about the Charles Manson stuff and playing those songs that he sung and was so familiar. I don't remember everything as a baby. I don't. There's a lot of things that go on in the blind spot of your world that happen when you're a baby and you don't remember anything. You just maybe have weird memories of stuff that you're like, well, I've never listened to this music, but why does it seem so familiar? Yeah. It's interesting watching, interesting study in the 1960s for what it was and why they juxtapositioned someone like a Charles Manson. And of course, the Christian revival. And where did I learn how those two were actually two sides of the same coin? Because when I watched one of the movies on Netflix, and they were focusing on the Christian side of the hippie movement. I mean, there was a Vietnam side, so there was perspective of the soldiers. There was the hippie side of the cannabis and the cult leaders and all the gurus and the organic shit and the communes. And then there was the Christian side of it, the Christian revival side of it. And I'm like, oh shit. And so it's socially unacceptable to radicalize people to hurt somebody else, like what Jim Jones did and the Koresh and Charles Manson. But it's okay if people sacrifice themselves for their friends, for their family, for the freedom, for their religion, for their politics, for their science, for their lifestyle, belief system. It's okay to sacrifice yourself for all your beliefs, but it's not okay to sacrifice somebody else because you don't believe what they believe, and then you think you should destroy them. And so that is such an amazing epiphany that you're given choices. You're being given choices. That's why there's a million religions, a million belief systems, a million everything. Because then you can find which one that's acceptable to you, and you can jockey between them and say, like, I don't like this one because I like this, and I don't like how they sin, but I like how they sin over here. But the end result is still the same. It's still the morgue. It's still, you have to abide by the rules and laws of our society. No homicide. Even suicide is unacceptable. But, they can't stop you, but you can't take other people down with you. And so if we're gonna depopulate society, it couldn't be somebody causing somebody else's death where you can actually make correlation equals causation. It had to be something that you did yourself through lifestyle, belief system, addictions, through having children, through the family, through starvation diets, through lack of tolerance to pain and suffering. It had to be a woven in story where you could go and diverge any way you want to. So as long as the outcome was always going to be predictable and the same, that's the morgue. That's how the system figured out how they didn't have to develop any more wars of where, like, you did something to me, blaming someone for doing something to them, when they actively put themselves in situations. They were given all the information, but they chose to believe this. They chose to put themselves in this situation. They chose. And so when you're choosing to have children, when you're choosing to take those pills, powders, and supplements, when you're choosing to take that cannabis, when you're choosing to laugh in the face of authority and government and recommendations or even mandates, whatever those are, then there's consequences. But they told you all the upsides and the downsides of everything. And so when I realized that the system is right on, that I couldn't blame the V's, because the V's are life. They're not antibiotic. They're probiotic. V's are probiotic. There's life in them. They have certain types of negative elements to then cause a chemical reaction that you're looking for anyways, because you're going to have that anyways when you're out there. And so V's are life. The obelisks are life. They represent life. They represent a vector piercing the heavens. The V's are obelisks, biological obelisks. We're in a great reset. It's evolution. It's uracil. It's RNA. It's DNA. And so there's going to be a certain amount of people that can't handle life, but they already couldn't handle life. They already used remedies and surgeries and oncology. They've already told the system they can't handle life. And so no one is taking any BOMBs to them. Well, we're hearing about nuclear war and stuff because we are in World War III, but every war front right now is going to look different for everybody. But when you shift the climate and cause so much growth and people can't handle life anyways, they don't know how to manage life in their body, mind, and spirit, then what do? When they feel life, they go and either carve it out, have a baby, or they go and remedy it away. Or they go and find something to keep bringing up hormones, a child, a pet, family and friends, drugs, alcohol, sex. You're given everything you could possibly want so you don't have to feel life or listen to indicators, get out of harm's way. When you're under the influence, you don't have any memories and you're just doing things kind of a zombie, not really thinking. You're just kind of like in an automatic pilot. You want all the pleasure and paradise and the inebriation and the anesthetization from pain and suffering. The system will give you everything you want. And so that's the thing. Be careful what you wish for, because you just might get it. And then you can't blame anyone. People are falling apart. They're told, hey, if you go out there, and it's pretty aggressive out there. The climate shifted. The sun is shining hotter and more aggressive. Yesterday I was hot. But I don't have like the armpit rashes. I'm not super congested. I actually have both sides of my nostrils open and clear And when I do develop life because of exposure to my husband or diverse company, then I can blow my nose and I'll feel like I did yesterday. I felt like a pain under, like the right side under my diaphragm, whatever. It was a little bit of pain, like a sensitivity to the ribs. And then it disappears in the morning after I release my demons. I wasn't too hungry yesterday. I think I had 2 slices of pizza left over from the day before and a little bit of a trail mix, but I wasn't too hungry, but I was energetic. I felt the energy shift yesterday. Oh my gosh, it sounded like I was in a soundproof room for at least about 10, 15 seconds. So I'm like, oh God, I know I'm going to feel tachycardia pretty soon. And I did. But I didn't feel like I had to go feed it. I didn't make myself a thing of spaghetti. I just heated up some pizza, ate that, had some juice, and that's about it. And had a little bit of the trail mix, nuts, and a little bit of the, what is it, like a Reese's Pieces, peanut butter and chocolate, but not too much of it. So, yeah, so I was making some observations about religion. Oh my gosh, the storylines are insane. And that's the thing, why I read all the storylines, why I'm binge watching Grey's Anatomy, because they're all about everyone hopping into bed with each other, everyone having babies, everyone getting bullied into surgery, or how do I say, what was it, sold into surgery all the time. It's going to save your life. You have surgery. It's going to save your life. You have surgery. It's going to save your life. Oh, and we're here to help you. Beautiful surgeons. Can't wait to cut into people. Scalpels. The scalpel. Oh my God. Worshipping the scalpel. Well, no wonder everyone's loving the surgeries out there. No wonder people are so intolerant to life and pain and suffering. I mean, even if they didn't watch Grey's Anatomy, you know how many other movies out there and shows that have developed storylines that you bought into unconsciously? And so when you felt pain and suffering, either you went and got it surgically taken out, or you went and found a naturopathic to go and remedy it away with something else, developing another offspring, or you went and got a puppy to make you feel better, or a kitten, or you went on your activist stance and started pounding the gavel and developing a whole, I don't know, a symposium to go and fight the system. Power to the people. Okay. So, yeah, binge watching Grey's Anatomy, binge watching The Vampire Diaries, binge watching almost everything, and then I get a condensed version of what the intentions are and the programming and the brainwashing, same thing, and the intentions. Because everything was great, 20 years ago, get your surgery, go get your cannabis, go do this and go hop into bed with everybody and their mother and everybody having children's babies and all that great. Okay, fine. And then the environment changes, but you're still buying into the storylines based upon an old environment. Not realizing that when you have the same storylines in a different environment, then your intentions are going to be accelerated. I don't want any pain and suffering. Okay, well, here, we'll treat your disease as much as you want. And then one day, oh, wait, there was that post in that diet something group. This person came into the ER with pain, and they're like, well, you have a half an hour. He thought a half an hour for a test, or she thought a half an hour for a test. No, half an hour to call your friends and family or whatever to do last rites or whatever, because you only have a half hour to live. That's it, half hour. The guy died. So in a different environment with the same storylines that you bought into 20 years ago, you're not getting the luxury to go and treat your disease. You'll get to die suddenly. The ultimate cure for cancer is died suddenly. But there's no pain and suffering, no regrets. Yeah, your next of kin's going to suffer, but you're not around to suffer. People don't want to suffer? Well, don't worry, you won't. Your friends and family will suffer, and maybe they'll be stronger for it. Maybe you'll be the lesson. That's kind of what's going on, is people are going to be the lesson for their friends and family. They're going to be the ones that are observing in that story that I told you right before I went into everything else of that person destroying that person in the house. They're going to be shocked, dismayed, traumatized, absolutely. And either they're going to succumb to that situation and die along with that person who's dying, or they're going to find ways and measures to put in place for protection and not forget that vision of that person who they never thought would do it, would hurt somebody. When you're watching your friends and family die, it's going to be a lesson. It's going to either prompt you to live or prompt you to go down with them at some point. That's what trauma and that's what hard, painful lessons are for. So you don't ever freaking forget. I learned that now as I remember looking back and learning about the Holocaust when I was a kid. Because some of those stories that I read were so brutal. I mean, it still traumatized me today, but I will never let anyone do that type of thing to me, even at a community level or a family level. Because there are men and women who think they own their husbands and wives, who will do damage to their husband and wives because they think they own them. What do you think Hitler did to all the Jews? At least 6 million of them. He thought he owned them. He thought he can destroy them and use them for whatever. And he did. And the system allowed it because that's was a major lesson. I don't know if it was intentional or what. Everyone speculates what people knew and when they knew it. Could they have stopped it? Could they? I mean, if the train left the station, literally and figuratively. And so we had to see those lessons. And yeah, we have people in our society that do shit like that to their own friends and family. Think they own them, bully them, whatever. And so trauma is a major lesson if you can survive it. And it'll make you stronger. And then you're also given the option to look at trauma as something horrible and evil, something to resist, something to be like, oh my God. But it's not going to matter if you don't survive. If you don't see the value in trauma that you can survive, regardless of who did it and why, whether it was contrived or someone else just didn't know any better and they just did what they were programmed to do because they were taught by their parents. If you survive it, you can always turn shit around. But if you're not even aware because you're under the influence, malnourished, in resistance, then you won't learn a damn thing. And you'll walk into danger and not see it for what it is. You'll check yourself into the hospital day by day, all the time, getting treated. You'll be around all your family and friends, partying like it's 1999, even though there's warnings that said, hey, something is on the rise, something's amiss. Maybe it's time to stay home and stay safe. Maybe you shouldn't have all these children. But hey, you've been given all the warnings and choices, and if you're so forgetful and don't care about the outcome of your choices, that's fine. You make your choice. So as long as it's legal, you're not hurting anybody else. And then your friends and family are going to either learn from that situation or blame somebody for whatever happens. And so everyone will be given a choice, but somebody is going to be the lesson. Someone's going to be the human sacrifice. Someone's going to be observing that situation and either going to do something different or just go down with the ship with everybody else. And so I was just like, oh my God. And that's the thing that I've been suffering is I'm watching the lessons left and right, and people are repeating the same mistakes as their friends and family because they feel they have no other choice. And when you feel you have no choices, despite all the choices given to you, whose fault is that? I mean, I guess if you can't read and you can't comprehend and you don't have the capacity for pain and suffering, then you do whatever you do, but then you really can't complain when you think about it. I mean, you can blame your genetic line. You can blame your parents for not instilling you a different way. You can blame your parents for not traumatizing you to give you that power to feel fear and pain and suffering so you understood it. But, I mean, people are like, no, I don't want to traumatize my kid. Well, I understand that. You weren't trained to do that. You shouldn't be doing that. That's for the system to do. And they are. So, oh my gosh. I don't know, man. It's just crazy. I'm just going to go all the way down to the beginning of from the last video. So I'm just like, dude, oh my God. And so people who resist Others lack their own self-awareness. They might have more in common with those they resist than those who do not trigger their resistance. And so through my resistance, I intended to understand, and there's no more resistance. I mean, I can be annoyed at people's choices, but why am I annoyed? Why do I care? I have no investment. They live or die. I mean, we're not in contractual relationship, but it's like, those who are looking through the window and observe someone destroying somebody else and being shocked by it. But at this point, you got to see so much trauma out there that you're not shocked anymore. You're just expecting it. You got to get to that point of desensitization, because you can't stop people from doing what they do. You can't change people. You can only change yourself. So you almost are required to be desensitized to death, pain, and suffering of other people. You have to be cold about it, because what's the point in being emotionally invested in strangers? What's the point? There is no point. And so I've stopped really resist people that trigger me. I mean, sometimes I'll react, but in a way that is productive for myself and other people with information. But those that just keep triggering, me to be like, oh my God, I just unfollow. Not a big deal. I mean, I have nothing against them. I just unfollow them. Big deal. Okay? So through my resistance, I intended to understand. Then no more resistance. So yeah, I'm desensitized. I mean, sometimes I did post those died suddenly video, 50 people that died suddenly within the last couple weeks. Okay. And I did a little, Facebook reel. Okay, there's my outlet. I'm still honoring those that died. I mean, I can't stop what's going on. I can't change people. I can't make them feel pain. I can't feed them all food if they have intolerance. And so, yeah, it's required. It literally is. To save yourself, it is required to be desensitized. I mean, doctors are desensitized. Mortuary people are desensitized. They have to be. They see it every day. They can't be emotionally involved with every single case that comes in, or they wouldn't survive their profession. So if you're going to survive this world and this great reset and your family and friends, you've got to be desensitized to how much death will happen around you, and don't let it destroy you. And yeah, it might have to be cold. You might have to disengage because you don't want to get caught up in the drama of all that. Okay, it's not being mean. It's not being disrespectful. It's protection. It's self-preservation, especially when there's so much of pain, suffering, and death all around you. And maybe it hasn't reached everyone. At some point it will. Just a matter of time. Okay? The environment is not as aggressive as it will be at some point. And the system is preparing for stuff. I'm watching these Facebook reels. People are observing police cars and budget rental, trucks that are taking up open spaces, and there's some kind of bivouac tents setting up for something. They don't know what it's for, as if there was a hurricane or some kind of natural disaster. And I mean, you're going to have to expect a lot of things that you probably were not privy to, because it was always somebody else. Oh, it's that person, that family, they have a bunch of death. They're all unhealthy. It's when it reaches your door. Oh, it's already reached my door. There's so many people that, even indirectly, that I know through my husband's world and his work, and so many people have died, contracted cancer, disease, chronic illness, heart attacks, strokes, kids going to the hospital. I mean, believe me, I have experienced it all. As far as died suddenly, well, I haven't seen that. I've seen people get diagnosed and then they get treated, and then they have 6 months, 7 months, and then they don't survive the treatments. They don't survive whatever they have. But I'm in Ohio. My husband's a freaking trucker. He's around strong-ass men. And with strong-ass men, there's a smattering of people who are a little weaker. And so, yeah, sometimes they'll make choices and they die suddenly. Yeah, there is one person that died suddenly because of an accident. And you don't know if because they were under a certain, I don't say under the influence, because of something else going on in their body that caused them to make a choice that then caused their death. I mean, yeah, as far as just a died suddenly, I haven't seen that yet in my world directly. Well, actually, I have, because somebody died suddenly, actually, in 2019, September, right before the pandemic was observed. And they just died suddenly in the truck. And that was before the pandemic. So people didn't bat an eye. They're like, oh, okay, well, that just happens. But you can only imagine that the pandemic and the frequency changes were happening even before we even knew that they were happening, before China happened. So people were dying suddenly even before that. So yeah, it happened in my world, but it was, what did I know? When did I know it? And what did I blame it on? It was just something that you're like, okay, it happens. So yeah, when people start dropping like flies literally around you or getting diagnosable conditions and they go to the hospital and you think you have 6 months to treat it and there's no time to treat it, and that's when you're like, holy shit. That's when you'll be like that person observing through the window, something they never experienced before. And that will change you. When your friends and family around you, who you thought would have time, when they die suddenly, that's the moment of truth. That's when you're either going to make yourself or break yourself. See, the system has been slowly doing things, right? The climate change has been slowly doing things, but eventually it's going to get turned up because of, I don't know, coronal mass injections or ejections or whatever else is going on. And you can say it's contrived, you can say it's organic, you can say it's cyclical, you can say whatever the hell you want. You can blame it on whatever you want. It doesn't even matter at this point. You can say it's Russia, it's China, it's Ukraine, it's NATO. You have plenty of things. You have plenty of storylines to adopt and feel safe in. So either way, are you going to survive it? System's warning you. Some point it's going to reach your doorstep, and then you'll be one of those, like that person observing through the window. And it's going to change you. Hopefully for the better. Okay? And so at the 11th hour, you see how religion in the 1960s and the Great Reset all go hand in hand. Love and absolute power corrupt absolutely. Please forgive me for making these comparisons. I mean no disrespect. I just wanted to show you how the system built in self-destruct mechanisms to trigger at their disposal. That's died suddenly. Okay? So once you're hooked on money, fame, influence, family, friends, love, pleasure, paradise, and painkillers, it will be hard to resist, and people die for money, fame, influence, family, love, friends, paradise, and painkillers. It was intentional. And so during the early days of his cult influence, Manson would talk about peace and love too. Levin said he slowly transitioned to talking about nothing else but death. But of course, by that point, his followers already thought he was God. Now you're hearing me talk about death a lot. No, I'm not Charles Manson. I'm not telling anyone they should pass away. But what I am saying is you're going to have to desensitize it when it happens organically because the climate shifted and the person's immune system couldn't handle the climate shift. They couldn't handle life in their body. Okay? Because he was nearing his death and he saw it for what it was. He saw it in other people. He knew what was going to happen. He talked about big machines doing things way back when. He knew a lot. Okay? And so he looked at himself as a type of Jesus Christ. His followers looked at him like a Jesus Christ. And then I'm like, oh, Jesus Christ. How did Jesus Christ show love? He loved them to the end or uttermost. John 13:1. And he showed that love by restoring them and using them after his resurrection. Love means, okay, this is what Christ, this is the whole Bible, this is Christianity, making something mean something. Love means being committed to the other person's highest good. The highest good for all people is that they would become more like Jesus Christ by growing in holiness. We're full of holes. And living to glorify him. Dying for their own sins, dying for their friends and family sins, the rapture. When you're taking Jesus Christ in your name and the salvation and you go rapture and you're saying that you leave off this earth and go get raptured and be in the kingdom of heaven and whatever else, and earth is hell, then you think you've won by dying. That's a storyline. People accept it, but then they're also at the end of their line. They have treated their cancer, disease, and chronic illness to such an extent there's nothing left. They got injuries, brain injuries, and other injuries that they don't have the capacity to go and feel the headaches and all that and eat all the food to repair and release. So then they have this storyline. And that is more socially acceptable, Jesus Christ and salvation and dying for one's sins and self-sacrifice, through your belief system. So as long as you sacrifice yourself, not others, and give everyone a choice. People do have choices out there. Versus a Charles Manson that radicalized people to destroy others in the name of whatever his belief system was. But I also see that what he did with Sharon Tate and the other titans of industry, or owners of industry, was a representation of that he knew that someone like Sharon Tate would be dangerous in the future. Hot chicks with babies. He knew what they were being used for. I mean, there's so many of the Sharon Tates. I mean, the hot chicks, the Twiggies, the models, the over-sexualized society, and it doesn't matter what orientation, and then the family. And so he had a kind of a skewed way of getting his point across, a very dark and deadly way of getting his point across. And they allowed him to do it. There was, speculation that he was allowed to, they released him from jail when he should have been in jail, and he was able to do what he was intending to do, was teach society a lesson. Be that memorable example. And Helter Skelter was a memorable example of what happens when society falls into such decay of pleasure and paradise and large families and over-sexualization, and then you have the Playboy Mansion and the girls that were willing to sell their souls so they can have money, fame, and power, and how they were treated by the guys that were like, oh my God. Oh yeah, we saw what happens when society descends into something like that. And Manson knew that. But you couldn't be like a Manson. You had to go through the avenue of religion, where you took yourself out, not anybody else. But if you were going to take somebody out, right? If you were going to destroy someone through pleasure and paradise and love and sacrifice, it would have to be through FDA-approved protocols, approved by the government. And so there's that. And that was right there, that lesson 74. 7 and 4 is 11. Oh gosh, numbers, man. I just see numbers everywhere. And so this guy, Butch Clark, he posted about, I don't know, the COVID-19 INJECTION rollout started on December 14th, 2020, which was the exact halfway point between the two eclipses. So August 21, 2017, then you had December 14th, 2020, and then April 8th, 2024. Exactly 173 weeks. Now, I didn't do the math, but I'll trust it. 1,211 days, 3 years and 3 months, 33. Okay. Signs and symbols. The biological obelisk is the VACCINE. Okay, it's just life inside those injections. That's all it is. People can't handle life. That's why they get disease from immune system activation. They already hold so much life within. They haven't managed it correctly. Something else, obviously activates and causes pain and suffering. And you either have the choice to go and remedy it away and carve it out, or release the demons, eat food, rest, and change the way you look at stuff. But again, that takes time. It's conditioning. Okay? And so the biological obelisk is the VACCINES. It was one of the 2 obelisks commissioned by Pharaoh Thutmose III, or Tutmos, for the Temple of the Sun in Heliopolis, near modern-day Cairo. Scholars believe that obelisks represented eternity and immortality, and their long tapering form functioned to connect the heavens and the earth. Or it's a vector piercing the heavens. It's a symbol of evolution. Vectors. That's why I posted in the next the next post about if America suffers from evolution, so will the world. And so the obelisks were intended to pierce the sky, aligning with the Egyptians' astronomical observations and solar worship. They represented the Benben, the primordial mound upon which the god Adam, A-T-U-M, or Adam, stood at the creation of the world, and were also associated with Benu bird, the Egyptian precursor to the Greek phoenix. Obelisks symbolize renewal and cyclical nature of life. And we're in it right now. And so obelisks were constructed as early as 3500 BC and are among the earliest shadow clocks in recorded history. Okay, so, obelisks were admired and adopted by various cultures worldwide, with many being transported to Rome during the Roman Empire. Some well-known examples outside of Rome include Cleopatra's Needle, okay, and then London and Luxor, and of course Washington, D.C., and Concord and Paris, France, and all that. And then there's the Washington Monument. And so an obelisk is a narrow four-sided instrument that tapers to a pyramid-like shape at the top. The word obelisk comes from the Greek word obeliskos, which means pointed instrument. Okay? And so Egyptians originally called obelisks tekinu and believed they represent eternity and immortality. And so their long tapering form is thought to connect the earth and the heavens. The pinnacle of obelisks are often covered in gold to reflect sunlight. And so obelisks were often erected to commemorate an individual or event, and were often placed in the courtyards of temples to honor the god within and the sun god. For Egyptians, the obelisk was reverential monument that commemorated the dead, represented the kings, and honored their gods. And of course, you can find obelisks in Egypt, Arles, Istanbul, Paris, London, New York, also Washington, D.C. And it's also a type of RNA genome assembly found in some organisms with rod-like secondary structures that encompass the entire genome. Uracil, evolution. A pyramidion is the capstone of an Egyptian pyramid or the upper section of an obelisk. Okay, pyrimidine is a heterocyclic aromatic compound that is biologically important. It is one of the two chemical compounds that cells use to make the building blocks of DNA and RNA. So now you see what this great reset and the biotech and all the different, V's, and it doesn't matter if you get V'd or not, because you're going to be exposed to people who have now a mixture of everything that everyone else took. You were never immune to your environment. No matter if someone took a V or not took a V, you were going to be exposed to someone who has some kind of mixture of their environment. And if you went into other cultures, went into other societies, other houses, other countries, you would pick up whatever the culture that's out there. So, they wanted a lot of people to get V'd for so many different reasons. And maybe before climate change, it was okay to have the monoclonal antibodies or immune system activation because the environment was not as aggressive. But in this environment, so much life can then cause people being corked up, blood clots, obviously heart attacks and strokes. But if you couldn't handle disease and you kept treating it, but that was your choice. These are the downsides of treating disease. You don't always get the side effects from somebody off the internet who's selling you a concoction. Though when in my group, when I had that group, Lillian was typing out all the things that people are experiencing during the J world, doing the J juice. Some people are at some point where they had immune system activation. Other people activated their immune system to such an extent that the salt cured them, so they had relief. And so that's why there was that 50-50 split of people loving and hating me, because it just depended upon what the salt was doing. Was it curing them or was it activating their immune system? So, if you can't handle immune system activation, you can't handle pain and suffering, you'll keep treating your disease until then the body is corked up and there's nowhere for the life to go. And then you get growths and you get fast moving cancers, and then you die suddenly. You get heart attacks and strokes. And so somebody posted somewhere, people, oh my God, what is happening? I'm like, exactly what the F we told you was going to happen 10 years ago. I remember being laughed at. Or someone said, oh, you're just a conspiracy theorist. Oh, you have mental issues, Jillian. Oh, you're just stupid. I don't believe in that. I don't care if you believe in it or not, it's happening. So the Great Reset is not a conspiracy theory for those who are in flippant denial, sticking their head in the sand. And so that's why I posted that picture of the Great Reset, right? So there's a biological obelisk, which is that VACCINE. There's an obelisk. There's the Washington Monument. Then I have the evolution with the DNA strand, the DNA helix, evolution equals RNA equals uracil pyrimidine or pyrimidion. Okay. And then I have the Great Reset. 5 episodes out of the World Economic Forum. And Klaus Schwab is going to be replaced by, most likely, Yuval Harari, Noah Harari. And he's Israeli, but he doesn't agree with Netanyahu's protocols. So, it's ironic that we have someone like, an engineer, a German engineer like Klaus Schwab, who then dubbed Yuval as his successor in the World Economic Forum. And that's great, because it's representation that both sides that were against each other a long time ago, back in World War II, are now aligned under the same umbrella. And you can still be critical of what another person is doing that's within the same culture. You don't have to hate, Yuval because he's Israeli, because he's also critical of Netanyahu, okay? So now you got to understand there's a bigger picture going on. We are in a Great Reset. The World Economic Forum's The Great Reset is a program that aims to improve the world by engaging with leaders from business, politics, academia, and other areas to shape global, regional, and industry agendas. The World Economic Forum is a nonprofit organization that was incorporated in 1971 and is headquartered in Geneva, Switzerland. And so I follow some influencers that are in Switzerland that came from Ukraine. And yeah, them and Finland and some other places are like the happiest places on earth. Well, yeah. They have beautiful country, beautiful people, great influencers, colorful clothes, and nice food. And they're not suffering. You know why? They already went through their suffering. They've got to deal with all of us. Okay? So there's that. I'm sure they are suffering in their own way. But, everything's relative. And so the Great Reset is not a conspiracy theory for those who are in flipping denial, sticking their head in the sand. Ha, I told you so. We all told you. You owe us an apology for making fun of us. Those who made fun of me in California because I knew something was going on, but I didn't have the proof, well, you'll get the proof. I hope you survive. Some people want proof, and then it'll be too late. And maybe you'll be the proof to your friends and family what not to do. Maybe they will learn what not to do from you. Maybe they won't make fun of someone who is giving them another point of view. It doesn't mean that the other point of view is right for you, but they're giving you a choice, and then you shit on the choices. Maybe your friends and family will finally embrace choices and be accountable for what they choose, but no thanks to you. Now they're suffering because they lost you because you were so narrow in your point of view. I don't want you guys to be the lessons to your friends and family, but you leave yourself no choices. That wasn't my fault. I gave you a choice, and you shit on me. But I guess suffering will make your friends and family stronger. But they're going to have to make a choice. Die with you now or later on, or they might choose to live if they even know what that means. Because what is living? Right? Then you have to go and figure out what does life mean. Oh my gosh. And if you have your perception of that's fine, then you have to be accountable for the outcome of your life. And so someone posted, Italy officially bans the sale of lab-grown meat. Oh, whoop-de-doo. It won't make a difference. Here's the thing. The birth rate in Italy has been declining steadily since the economic crisis in 2008. For reasons demographers agree is rooted in economic insecurity. The average monthly income across Italy is 2,475 a month. And that's euro a month, according to the iStat. So do you think they can afford to ban the sale of lab-grown meat if there is economic uncertainty? I mean, if cattle die suddenly, people are stealing each other's cattle, draining the resources, and then they're saying, nope, no lab-grown meat. Do you think they can afford to starve? They probably need lab-created more than the rest of the world, because whatever they're eating now or before obviously wasn't helping them. Then there are other issues in Italy that's going on. They can't afford to be discriminatory. But people will cut off their nose to spite their face, and maybe there are paid agitators to go and get people all afraid of it, knowing that there's a great reset. And if you get someone to be afraid of meat, milk, cheese, and eggs, and they're like, oh, I'll be afraid of it. They choose to be afraid. They choose to listen to someone to be afraid of food. Then they're making a choice to starve themselves. So now they have no lab-grown meat. The cows and the chickens and the pigs are few and far between because they're all dying from some kind of disease or whatever. So now they have what? What do they have to eat? Well, if what did I say? If they already have low fertility rates, starvation is not going to help them. That's what people get for listening to those and saying, oh, food is poison. And so I said, getting cancer is a luxury, not anymore. Getting treatment for disease is a luxury. It won't be anymore. Someone had the chance to turn that around. And a person says, I'm not writing a list of all the people I personally know that have died or are very close to dying. It's getting too long. It's beyond comprehension and sadness. She goes, one loved husband, father, and good man complained of feeling ill to my friends at work. He got worse and went to the hospital. They did some tests and told him he had a half an hour. He thought he had a half an hour to wait for the test results. He died there, and then no time to get his family there. And she goes, what the F is going on? When is it going to be acknowledged? There's enough evidence. Where is the truth and justice? My heart feels so heavy with the pain of injustice. Now, she's blaming it on the V's. But there are people who are not V'd, who are dying suddenly, who are contracting cancer, disease, and chronic illness. So when you get a V, you're saying to the government that you are intolerant and you have deficiencies and that you need their help in surviving with the antibody and immune system activation. So already that is implying that you are at a deficit, a deficiency. And so those that don't get a V, some of them are still dying, yes, they're making choices. Maybe they should have gotten a V and that may have been bought them time, but you can't really guarantee that. But there are people who haven't gotten a V that are getting diagnosable conditions. But someone who was lesser than them probably would have died if they didn't have the genetics the other person had. So, everything is relative, but if you don't have what it takes to deal with climate change and you can't manage a life in your body and you're afraid of food, water, and air, I don't know what kind of chance you have to survive climate change. And so some of you in the J world bought yourself a few years because you released the demons in the beginning. You went through some of the pain and suffering that was required to buy yourself time. But I said, don't get too comfortable. You still have a long way to go. Whatever demons you might have released back then, you could have developed new ones because of remedies and treatments and diverse company, animals, children. And some people have gone back on some of their diets, gone back on the J juice, food mitigation protocols, as well as found a new remedy. It's just a matter of time before all the conditions are right. The J world is not a fad. It's definitely a lifestyle change. And I've been off the J juice since 2020. Just so you know, I haven't done any of the J juice. I don't need it anymore. And so I told you the system is going to cure cancer. How do you cure cancer? It's called died suddenly. Death is the ultimate cure for pain and suffering. That's why the pain protocols must be FDA approved. There is no single cure for cancer, but there are treatments that may cure you. Now, it can be cured at the micro level and you still have enough life left in you to still live, but they've frozen the act of life at the time. But if you're not releasing it and feeling the pain of release, which people are not wanting to do, then it's only a matter of time before that beast activates again. A cure means that the cancer has gone away with treatment. no more treatment is needed. That's called even died suddenly. Okay? And the cancer is not expected to come back. People don't come back from the dead, just so you know. However, it's rare that a doctor can be sure that cancer will never come back. Instead, doctors will only often say that cancer is in remission rather than cured. So when they say a cure means that the cancer has gone away with treatment, no more treatment is needed, and the cancer is not expected to come back, that also means someone died. That cancer is not coming back, that person's not coming back. However, it's rare that a doctor can be sure that a cancer will never come back. Instead, a doctor will often say the cancer is in remission rather than cured. Read those words. Remission is only reserved for those who have a lot more body to them to deal with energy conversion. You need the substance. Remission is a stage of lesser intensity when something improves or subsides. In medicine, remission is the abatement of the disappearance of the symptoms of a disease. Just because you disappeared the symptoms doesn't mean you disappeared the cancer. For example, remission can mean the cancer is manageable and not getting worse. Remission can last for months, years, or the rest of your life. When people request cures for cancer, they're asking for died suddenly. The system doesn't want to cure your cancer because they don't want to destroy you 100%. You have to keep giving them permission to take away your immune system progressively until there's nothing left to be treated. That's how you destroy yourself. You request the help from the system as well as our licensed mercenaries. That's why you have to keep signing every single time you get oncology. That's why when you do a transaction with someone, when it comes to pain and suffering, there is an offer, there is a consideration, and there's acceptance. And when you accept some antibiotic, you're accepting death at the micro level that eventually you won't be able to treat your disease anymore because it'll be out of control. Because you kept choosing to transact death. And you've brought in licensed professionals to do that. And so the hurricane season will be this next one will be a season from hell. Well, I don't doubt that at all. Quite. 2024 is going to be a doozy. It already is. The last 3 years were major indicators to make some kind of change to at least lessen the potential for something catastrophic. Shit. Now, what is it? We're in the real estate market. They had a change with the commission structure, and the buyer's agent would have to develop an agreement with a buyer to give them a commission, but the listing agent or the realtor's listing agent does not have to negotiate the buyer's commission. And so when you don't have to negotiate the buyer's commission and the buyer has to negotiate the commission with their buyer, then people will be very competitive and maybe they can move up north if they're in down south. Okay, maybe the people up north, the realtors or the listing agents, can actually be so competitive and sell houses to people who are down south that need to get the hell out of harm's way. Because there's plenty of houses here. You just got to find them. If you're living in Florida and it's really expensive in Florida, you can afford a house here in little midtown Ohio, Canton, Ohio. But see, people they think that, I don't know what the people are thinking. This hurricane season will be possibly the worst ever. I gotta pee. Hold on. If you're in Florida, maybe you should move. And if you think nothing's going to happen to you, you're probably under the influence. And your indicators, your dashboard has been turned off. That's why I'm so glad I left Florida before the shit hit the fan. I'll tell you what. And so the release regen has shifted for me. So I notice when my husband comes home, I'm not so congested and sneezing, coughing, or feeling weird from microbial exposure. I notice that I fall asleep faster, deeper, and I snore like a freight train driving him out of the bedroom. I feel an endurable pain under my ribs around 8 p.m. at night and sometimes arm pain. I made an assertion the snoring was from a deeper state of sleep with more oxygen intake, developing more of an aggressive repair process with all the food I eat, and no more armpit rashes, as those rashes were probably waste material leaving the body. When I blow my nose, it is a productive release with mucus, and mucus comes out of both sides of the nostrils, and I feel much clearer and energetic right afterwards. I also observed a major frequency shift with a ringing in my ear for at least 10 seconds, and it was like a soundproof room. I knew later on tachycardia would happen, and it did, but I was not feeling hungry or tired, just energetic, hot, and open to information. My healing process has changed, and the right side of my body is finally waking up and becoming alert to the world around me. Biophysically, waking up is a brutal process because you have to now wake up what you put to sleep in the medical, holistic, energy healing world surgical system. And you literally cannot be under the influence of drugs and alcohol or painkillers or of hormone and sex and pets. It is an incremental, painful process that must be supported with all food, rest, proper release. Which is why you are given all the storylines to believe to make deterioration socially acceptable and to give you some kind of absolution. The government was being kind to you, or else you would be freaked out and angry like you are right now. They gave you a way out via loopholes, and they gave you choices, and they will continue to give you choices, so that way you can be accountable for your choices. And then you can stop blaming someone else for your choices. People will still blame other people, but at least the government gave you a choice. Inevitably, unaccountable, immature people will always blame someone else for their choice. And that's why the system is under surveillance, because people will do damage to others if they think they can do, because they cannot be accountable for their own choices. And there are indicators of those who are unaccountable. They're all over your Facebook blaming someone for something, or they think they can save you in body, mind, and spirit, selling you a pain-free lifestyle with whatever product they have on the market. And they're making a shit ton of money. Well, good for you. And so population control is first by story, then by actions, developing predictable reactions. I think Christians can still be Christian, but not sacrifice themselves for everyone to the point of death. Can you literally and physically save yourself from the deadly rapture and still be a Christian? Remember, I have been tossing religion back and forth in my head and trying to figure out what is the point of it. But now I understand what the point of it. It was absolution. It was a way to condition the people to accept death, and there's a great storyline around it. So if not, then you are a victim of the Christian revival instilling self-destruct when all the conditions are right. Can Hebrews save themselves and still believe in Yeshua and not succumb to the deadly rapture and still be Hebrew honoring Yeshua? Can energy healing people believe in ascension and still save themselves without succumbing to the deadly rapture and still ascend here on earth? Can you ascend in your mind and still be in your body and be coherent and talk to your friends and family through the internet? Can parents still save themselves while honoring their children and giving them the best life possible with absolutely no expectation their children will survive? Or will parents sacrifice themselves along with their children because if their kids are not guaranteed to survive, the parents don't deserve to survive either? Some people will die with their children, and some children will die with their parents. If you think physically leaving the earth was via a spirit, the rapture, ascension, or going home, right, to Pleiades, is the way, maybe that was an intentional storyline fed to you, us, by those way back in the 1930s and before, and now, right? Population control, again, is first by story, then by actions developing predictable reactions. Scientism is correct, okay? The new world is about scientism, as those stories of the past developed a burning to race to the bottom or top when all the conditions are right. Someone said yesterday, be careful of the Kool-Aid you are drinking. Yes, that also goes for everyone following a predictable storyline. I am a child of science. I understand science very well. Behavioral science, biological science, physical science, and I also suffer through the storylines. And I also can develop my own storylines. Yeah, people, oh, you're not going to work, you must be lazy. Oh, you have PMS, PMDD, oh, you're fucking lazy. Who are you? You can't talk to me because you're not like me. You can't belong to our group. You didn't buy a present for us like everybody else. Blah, blah, blah. I mean, the storylines were astronomical. And so I developed my own storyline. Screw you all. I'm going to Ohio. You all can suffer in California. Because if you can't develop your own storyline, you will follow somebody else's and inevitably self-destruct because you chose to follow a specific storyline. You were given so many storylines to believe, and you chose whatever regrettable outcome you are experiencing right now. And maybe you have no regrets because maybe you won't suffer, but your survivors will. Because you'll die suddenly, right? People who die suddenly have no regrets and they won't suffer. Scientism is the belief that science and the scientific method are the best or only way to understand reality and the world. It's also the belief that the methods of science are the only reliable ways to obtain knowledge. Yeah, because all the stories are based upon science. That's why these stories exist. Atom, A-T-U-M, the God, A-T-O-M, the physics portion of chemical reactions and matter and all that. And then you have Adam and Eve and the story of the garden and all the other shit. And so you have the theology. You have all the biblical stories. So that way, if you didn't want to understand science, then you'd follow a storyline. And it'd have a predictable outcome. You'll die someday. There you go. And so the difference between success and failure is they look the same. A model in the industry may look successful to people who value beauty, using one's body to get ahead, but also may look like a failure to others who know how deadly it is to live up to societal norms of starvation. The beauty of everything is that you get the choice to perceive anything in any way you want, and you must also be accountable for your choices. Which is why I'm so different. Pain and suffering is expected if you want to survive. And you literally cannot afford to starve yourself. Which is also why the government has no issue with me, really, because they had an issue when I was making claims, but now they have no issue with me. I can't sell pain and suffering and food to people who are intolerant. I can't sell them another belief system when they're so entrenched and tunneled in how they do shit. So they have no problem with me. You know, I'm not going trying to force convert. I'm not forcing my opinion on anybody else. I'm not proselytizing. I'm not selling anything to anyone. So, which is also why the government has no issue with me today, because they know most people are not conditioned for pain and suffering. And most people will not change even if their life depends on it. They've been given pleasure and paradise and addictions, and that's hard to resist and hard to give up. And people have been given absolution to die for their belief system. They die for their country. They die for their friends and family. They die for their pets. People are given permission to die for their children, to die for freedom. Oh, I'm not free. I'm going to die for freedom. I'm going to die for America. Okay. You've been given permission to die for whatever you want, whatever you perceive is your absolution. People can't wait to die for their activism. And they prove it every single day. You're choosing to die for your beliefs and your lifestyle. Despite all the choices before you, you're still choosing to die. So whose fault is that? Many people cannot handle life. They prove it daily with their remedies and surgeries, under the influence, with distractions. In order to live, you must honor life and the sanctity of life and respect life, or else life will destroy you. But it's not your friends and family because you choose to be around them. It was how you reacted to the life in your body. It was always your choice. But again, the government is giving you a way out as painless as possible. And so that's why the ultimate cure for cancer is die suddenly. They don't want to cure your cancer without your permission. That's the remedies market and the surgeries market. But if you're going to cure cancer, they're going to warn you. That's called climate change. Die suddenly is the ultimate cure for cancer. And the system did warn you. I even tried to warn you. Believe me, I have suffering because you guys don't get it. I've been suffering because you guys don't get it. Some of you don't. Some of you do. And maybe you were never meant to get it. And so then this post with CBS News, Cameron Diaz welcomes a baby boy named Cardinal at the age of 51. And I'm 50. I'm not having any kids. Oh, hell no. But I'll read this to you. This is also another form of acceptable way to die. When you have a baby, it takes away so many resources that you could use for yourself to survive and convert to a new life for you. That's why the system promotes this. This is an acceptable form of type of cell death, apoptosis, right? The mother won't survive over time. Remember, a cell death, a programmed cell death, apoptosis, is motherhood. Okay? The mother won't survive over time. It's even questionable if that child will survive. But the beauty of being human is that you realize this and you can potentially redirect the intentions. But the intention was, yes, a programmed cell death, motherhood, fatherhood, parenthood. And so there's so many things working against both the mother and the child. People need as many resources as they can get, and they can't afford to squander accessible resources. But Hollywood does what it does. They influence. They are the ultimate influencers, so people are okay with sacrificing themselves for whatever. Everyone loves a child or a puppy. That's why you have absolutely no power against the system unless you're able to question everything. And I can see most people are incapable of even questioning their own lifestyle and belief system. And why should they? I just observe. The story of vampires is about family and friends, people feeding off each other, families feeding off their own offspring, whether it is microbially or a child or a lover. Now you see why allegory is so important and right on point. Bloodlust, blood sacrifice, and human sacrifice, it's everywhere, especially in family. I paid attention to the stories in the movies. I see the correlation. And I gotta write this down. Parenthood is a pepticist. It's a programmed cell death. And so if you want to survive parenthood and having offspring, then you can't sacrifice yourself for that new cell, which is that new child. Not only do you have to get yourself now recouping the resources lost by having that child, but then you have to teach your child also to recoup the resources that they have to gain because they're still growing up. Okay? And you have to teach them how to gain resources and release demons. And I don't know how you're going to do that and save yourself at the same time. But in the old world, parenthood equals apoptosis. Apoptosis equals a programmed cell death. Remember, we learned that a long time ago. Okay? That's what parenthood is. And so Grey's Anatomy was all about bloodlust and human sacrifice and vampirism. The storylines were so well done, you didn't realize what you bought into. But I see it today. And so the last thing I'm going to say here is having kids is like cutting off percentages of your body, mind, and spirit. How will you recoup the resources lost? The older you are, the more malnourished you are, the more unstable you are, the more likely you and your child will suffer disease and issues with development. You just diluted yourself and you developed a life that needs a whole lot more than you could probably biologically give. Socially acceptable human sacrifice is what makes it easier for the system to control the population. And so when you bought into hypersexuality and family and friends and remedying disease and the hospital system and the medical holistic energy healing world, and you bought into people take away your pain and suffering and being in pleasure and paradise, dude, I'll tell you what, people have everything working against them. Many will not be able to survive. It's the ones that can walk away and reevaluate what it is they bought into yesterday as well as 20 years ago. And some won't be able to. They're too entrenched. They're too addictive. They're too comfortable. They haven't seen the worst. They lived in such a secure, homogenized, safe life, so well protected, that one day when they go buy a house and they look inside and see somebody destroying somebody else, that is going to be the most rudest awakening ever. And it won't even come to that. They'll just have people around them die suddenly, or they just die suddenly, and they won't have any of that, but their friends and family will, and their friends and family will either die with them or wake up, who knows. But some of you are so homogenized and so well protected and completely oblivious to the dangers around you that it will take a major trauma, such as climate change, to wake your ass up. And some won't survive it, because the awakening process biophysically, when you're biophysically awake, your body's waking up, it's an energy conversion that some people do not survive. That's called heart attacks and strokes and aneurysms. And so the last 7 years, I've been slowly waking up the asleep parts of my body and my brain and my body, mind, and spirit, and all that, and also replacing what was lost, and also taking on more knowledge and understanding, intending to understand what the system is doing. And I still have my own issues with it, but what are you going to freaking do? Either survive it or succumb. You only have two choices. And the system is giving you those choices. You're the one that surrounds yourself by people, places, and things, and addictions, and in denial. Denial is not another river in Egypt. Denial is all around you. Just look at your Facebook. Completely oblivious people. who are so well protected that will need to be woken up. And the system is going to do that. Mark my words, the system is ready to wake up everybody. All right, bye.